This Civic Media podcast is sponsored by UW Organ and Tissue Donation. Organ donations are desperately needed, and now is the right time to become an organ donor. Talk to your family. Get the dot. Save lives. Go to heroicdeed.com.
Am I brave enough? Am I strong enough?
Hey, Matt Rothschild with you this afternoon on the Maggie Daun Show on the Civic Media Radio Network all across the state of Wisconsin. The phone numbers are 855-752-4842. If you want to join the conversation, that's 855-75-CIVIC. Maggie's off today. I'm joined by Angela Lang, who's my usual co-guest host when I sub in here for Maggie. Angela Lang is the executive director of Black Leaders Organizing for Communities, and one of the leaders of the progressive movement in Wisconsin, frankly. So thanks for being with me, Angela. Yeah, it's been a hard week, so I'm glad we got you. Do we have your vocal there?
Yep. That was me. That was my end. I don't know how to use stuff. Happy to always be here. Every time you call, I'm like, yes, indeed, pending my schedule. I love to share space with you, especially now too.
Yeah, I think it's really important to hear your perspective on a day like today. We've got a couple callers I wanted to get to. We've got Matt from Middleton. Matt, what's on your mind today?
Hey, guys, and bless you guys for what you do here at Civic Media. We're going to need you more than ever. I'm glad you mentioned Timothy Snyder. He's a main voice for Ukraine and fighting tyranny. He's been doing it for years, and he's brilliant. But I just want to tell you, we are in for a real hard time, and I'm not losing my anger. My anger fuels me, and I'm very angry. I'm angry at these conservative voters that do this mental jinjitsu all the time, trying to placate and pretend that they are not supporting a fascist movement, because that's what this is. You look up the definition, General Milley hit the nail on the head. This is fascism. And it's going to be violent. We're already seeing violence spread in our communities where people feel free to say whatever they want and be terrible to one another. And that's what fascism does. And we need to be ready for this, and we need to branch out and support each other to fight against this stuff. And if you see it happening in the street, don't be silent, because that's what they want us to do. Thank you, guys, and God bless.
Oh, great call.
Thanks for that.
Matt from Middleton. He's right. There is this violence that's coming, and Fox is just, I saw something on Fox today that I almost couldn't believe, and that is that there were two of their announcers were talking about Jack Smith should get the death penalty. It's just like, really? That's where we're at? And that is just justifying and paving the way for, more violence to come, that kind of violent rhetoric. I want to dig into a little bit of what Matt said, being angry at conservative voters. I get that. I mean, I do think we need to talk to some people who voted for Trump who aren't flaming racists or sexist, who don't have Confederate flags flying in their yard and don't have really nasty bumper stickers and things like that. And I know I'm friends with some folks. I play a lot of cards. I play a lot of poker. And I know some decent folks who voted for Trump. I mean, I have to admit, half the state voted for Trump, half the country voted for Trump. They're not all incorrigible racists and sexists. There are a chunk that are incorrigible racists and sexists. There is a fascist movement of 10, 15, 20% of this country. They're not only Donald Trump cultists, they're fascists. They don't believe in democracy.
Yep.
We got to recognize that. Those aren't the folks we should waste a single moment trying to convince, because they're not going to come around anytime soon. But we do need to listen at first. It's always good to listen at first to people who voted for Trump, who we otherwise know as decent people until they prove otherwise, other than their voting, and try to figure out where they were coming from and how to, bring these folks around. I do think that's part of what we got to do. So thanks, Matt from Middleton. We got Tom from Jackson on the phone. We'll take Tom's call, and then we're going to hear from Representative Francesca Hong, one of my favorites in the legislature. Tom, you're on the line. What's on your mind?
Hi, Matt. Yeah, hi, Matt. I'm glad to hear you're taking the spot today. And I hope you don't cut me off, but one thing I've not been hearing as to one of the main reasons, may not be the main reason, but it was certainly one of the main reasons in Kamala's presidential run. And that is, I'm sorry, Kamala. That is the...
You still there, Tom? Yeah. Are you still there? Talk to me.
Yes. Okay. That is abortion. And what I mean by that is that the Democrats are giving up something that they don't need to give up. And the rural people in particular think that Democrats are evil and mean and cruel by being for abortion. And I think the Democrats have to finally realize they need to come to a middle spot and become pro-life. And I don't mean the pro-life that the right is talking about, meaning total ban. That's not what I'm talking about. The three main top issues in that are, rape, incest, and the life of the mother. That should always be on the table and to push for. But I think the left needs to instead talk about adoption and being pro-life, and they need to take away that from the right, that winning hand, especially in rural white countryside. I know that. I live in this area. I mean, these people, their goal is to stop abortion, and that's the key reason why these hard right-winger nutbags are winning, because I know many good right-wing people out here. It's the top of mind, and it has been for years, but it's just, as time goes by, it's not getting less. It's getting stronger.
Okay, I hear you, Tom.
And stronger. And now, finally, you can see it. So I think the left needs to modulate their view on that to win.
I got you, Tom. Thanks for the call, Tom from Jackson. Go ahead, Angela.
I was going to say, I think it's interesting. One thing that I always found fascinating is like the term pro-life, because it implies the other side isn't, right? And so like there's that, but also you look at the Republican Party that claims to be pro-life, quite frankly, does not care about life after birth. You do not care about Black Lives Matter. You do not care to make sure that there is support for parents raising children. And so I find it interesting that people use the term pro-life, but then after a baby is born, depending on what they look like, what zip code they're in, where is that same energy for being pro-life actually during life after the baby is born, right? And so I always find it very fascinating that people use that term. And I don't think that Democrats should compromise on their stance of abortion. I think there is something about being able to break down the pro-life language that folks are using. Because when you look at it, if there's two parties that are fighting for lives and supporting lives and making sure people have thriving lives and thriving communities and healthy communities, that's only the Democrats. And so I think it's very contradictory.
Yeah, I also think Tom's wrong. I appreciate the call and the perspective, but I think a majority of Americans are favor abortion rights, and that's not why Kamala Harris lost, because you see the referendums did better than Kamala Harris even. So I think we should move on to Representative Francesca Hong. Do we have the representative here on the stream? Hey, Representative Hong, how are you doing today? I'm sorry we can't hear your voice. We'll try to get the vocals to work. I can see your face on the screen. Representative Hong is one of the most progressive members of the state assembly. Last time we talked, she was up north working on some races. How are you feeling today, Rep. Hong?
I am doing okay. Thanks for asking, Matt. How are you doing? Hi, Angela.
Hey, Fran.
Yeah, we're all just trying to process right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we should be doing before we do anything else. Just, process politically, process emotionally, regroup, regather, pause, reflect, comfort. That's the mood I'm in right now. Tell me what your take on the elections were. Let's start with the national, Rep Hong.
I think there were some unforced errors, but it's important to name the context of there was a shorter amount of time with a new candidate to build a campaign. There was a lot of noise around the previous candidate, the president, that momentum did not bode well for Democrats. But I think in the end, the problem that has been lingering for Democrats since probably 2002, and in one thing that they've never really addressed in a way comprehensively, is the elitism that remains in the party that makes it harder and harder for us to be a home for working class families. And I think when you have the disparity in low to no income families and the wealthiest families and the wealthy few, and you've got both of those categories voting for Republicans, we have a serious issue as a party claiming to be big tent, but really only being actually, I would say, more exclusive. And so if you're the party that's more exclusive, the math is going to math and you're not going to get as many votes.
Mm-hmm. Right now, there's kind of the opposite criticism, and this happens every time Democrats lose. When they're not blaming, black folks for not showing up, they're blaming the left for moving the party too far to the left. I saw this ridiculous anonymous Democrat quoted somewhere today who said AOC is toxic to the Democratic brand with swing voters. And said her primetime DNC speaking slot played directly into the narratives that lost the election. Now it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's fault that we lost the election. I mean, to me, this is just so far from being recognizing what happened. I mean, Bernie Sanders I saw him talk the morning of the election saying, look, no matter who wins this election, Democrats have to start talking to working people. This is before MSNBC had already coronated Kamala Harris. They thought she was going to win. And Bernie came on and said, look, doesn't matter who wins, we got to start talking to working class people. And it turns out Democrats weren't talking to working class people, weren't understanding the pain of a majority of Americans who have problems paying rent because rent's gone up so high or car insurance has gone up so high. I mean, it's outrageous that people are spending 30, 40, 50% of their income on rent. And Kamala Harris came to that late, but we'll talk about that a little more after the break. On the Civic Media Radio Network, I'm Matt Rothschild subbing in here for Maggie Daun, and I've got a great group with us here, so join the conversation.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot no deputy. I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot no deputy.
Hey, Matt Rothschild here, subbing in for Maggie Daun on the Maggie Daun Show on the Civic Media Radio Network all across the state of Wisconsin. You can join the conversation, 855-752-4842. I'm joined by my guest host, Angela Lang. She's with me whenever I sub in here, if she's free. And she was kind enough to join today. And we're also joined by Rep. Francesca Hong. No, I can't resist Rep. Hong because, I used to coach soccer. I play tennis. I hate unforced errors in tennis. I used to play basketball. I hate unforced errors in basketball. So I got to ask you what the unforced errors were.
I think there was a missed opportunity to engage the multiple coalitions, the Asian American caucuses or coalitions, the Black coalitions, the Latino coalition, and work towards building solidarity for those three by resourcing them more. I think I heard later on that folks were getting literature or resources that weren't in different languages till later or till it was too late. I think, there was an opportunity to show that Democrats are fighting for us, that Democrats are one of us. And one of the issues that we constantly run into that I even find myself doing is that we lecture and shame before we actively listen and affirm. And when people are in pain, whether it's not, with rising costs and mental health issues and folks are struggling, it's hard for them to hear from someone who is doing really well that they're going to make their lives better. And we didn't really articulate the policies clearly. I think we should have been talking about transformative policies, about healthcare, about student loan debt, about housing, and instead we were parading around war criminals or daughters of war criminals and talking about becoming a bigger tent by going further right. And last I checked, folks who were Republicans oftentimes still vote Republican. And I think centering them as opposed to the folks who could tell us, what is it about your economy? I want to know about your economy. This isn't a conversation about the economy. What is your economy right now? And having trusted messengers to actually carry that and bring that back to a party. I wish we had done a lot more. I think we still are the party of working families, but we have a lot more to do in terms of making sure that we are each tailoring that message to the diverse group of working families that is who makes this country work.
I want to pick up on 2 points you made there, Representative Francesca Hong. The first one is Liz Cheney. My eldest son, kept telling me this is a mistake. Going to Liz Cheney and invoking Dick Cheney is not going to help you turn out the vote. It's not going to help you turn out the vote in the Democratic and progressive base. That's for damn sure. And how many, Republicans are going to come around who haven't already come around when they watched Liz Cheney, run the hearings and say what a threat that Donald Trump was back then? That you already got those folks, and she's not going to get you many more.
Who wasn't even liked by Republicans.
Right. Yeah, I thought, I thought, well, maybe it's going to work. That's a strategy. I don't know if there's data behind the strategy, but it turned out it didn't work. And the other thing that you said that I think was so important, Representative Hong, is, what economy are we talking about? When, Biden talks about how great the economy is, and when Biden used the term Bidenomics, and they had Kamala Harris use the term too, which was deadly, maybe the GDP is good. Maybe we're doing better than the Western European countries. But for the folks who can't pay their rent and for folks whose real income has gone down, that was not comforting. And I think that was just a total lack of awareness by folks who are doing well, that there are folks out there who aren't doing well, and citing macroeconomic statistics is not going to make them feel any better toward the end of the month when they're scrounging.
I think what's interesting is, and I had this conversation with folks, and I raised this as a flag, is the way we talk about the economy, especially when people are like the job numbers, or we have these new things that are all great. But what happens if you don't feel reflected in those numbers, in that success of those numbers? You feel left out. You don't feel like you're being engaged. But then also just the language we use. And I remember talking about this in the governor's race. An ambassador of ours had brought this up years ago, is that when people talk about the middle class, there are some people that don't even identify with even being in the working class or in the middle class. They're like, I'm low income. Middle is what I'm aspiring to be. So when people are talking about rebuilding the middle class, there are some folks I've talked to that don't even think that they're talking to them. And I think that's, I think campaigns mean well when they talk about the middle class. But if people are really struggling, middle class is a dream for them. They're like, I'm poor. I'm, lower class even. And I think I saw a shift in how she talked about an opportunity economy, which I thought was helpful. But was that shift too late? Did people still feel that? Did they feel reflected in the phrase opportunity economy versus, uplifting the middle class type of messages that we always hear?
And that was the predominant message from her convention speech, uplifting the middle class, that the middle class is the basis of our economy for then. So as you pointed out, Angela Lang, anyone who doesn't see them in the middle class doesn't know where they fit in.
I don't
And
think
also, yeah, go ahead, Representative Hong.
opportunity doesn't speak to the urgency of the struggle of folks right now. Opportunity doesn't mean that I'm going to have some sort of immediate relief. And the tough thing for me is I was thinking about the child tax credit and how that did provide immediate relief, but that policy in itself still isn't associated enough with Democrats being the party that is fighting for us. So even when we have these policies, it's really hard for us to bring more folks in and build trust with working families. And I think a lot of it has to do exactly as Angela was talking about, the resonating message, the words, I think we should absolutely have been talking more about rising costs. I don't think we talked enough about how low gas prices were under a Biden administration. And I wish we'd done a lot better job about public education. And there was no education policy that folks were talking about. And we know that strong public schools are strong communities. And this is an issue that has bipartisan support. And you saw it in referendums across the state where communities were fighting for their public schools.
Rep Hong, can you join us after the break, or do you have to go?
I will absolutely join you after the break.
Oh, that's terrific. That's Rep Hong. We are listening to the Maggie Daun Show. We'll be right back.
You're an organ donor, right? Well, here's a tragic fact. Approximately 20 people die each day waiting for precious donated organs. You could make a life-saving decision simply by getting that important dot on your driver's license. That little dot shows those who need to know that you've made a decision to donate organs at a critical time. Go to heroicdeed.com to learn more about the importance of organ donation and how you can make your wishes known. Talk to your family. Get the dot. Save lives. heroicdeed.com.
Hey, Matt Rothschild here on the Maggie Daun Show. Maggie's off today, and I'm joined by my usual subbing co-host, Angela Lang of Block, and Representative Francesca Hong, who represents the Madison area in the State Assembly. Rep Hong, I want to ask you what advice you're giving to your constituents or your young staff members this week, or what advice you have for our listeners who are in distress or in despair today.
I'm reminding folks that however you are feeling, however much you may be not feeling, I know I'm in my very much dazed and numb phase, is valid. And, that there is always a journey that we can take to get to hope. But let's take the pressure off ourselves to hope in this moment. Mm-hmm. And I know that when it comes to movement building, we've already built so much. And I know with this looming new administration, there are going to be people who join our movement every single day. And so that means more people to tap in when you have to tap out. But I truly believe that systemic change, historic moments of crises, people going through the worst struggles. We always have folks, whether it's artists or poets, people who've been able to get us through, while others are working in many other lanes. So I think right now that's what I'm reminding folks of.
I love the invocation of the poets. We played Wendell Berry a little earlier. I want to see if we can play this very famous poem, the last stanza of a very famous poem by W.H. Auden, the British poet, who who wrote a poem called September 1st, 1939, the day the Nazis attacked Poland. Here's the last stanza. Give a listen to this.
September 1st,
in his own
1939, by W.H. Auden. I sit in one of the dives on 52nd Street, uncertain and afraid, as the clever hopes expire of a low, dishonest decade. Waves of anger and fear circulate over the bright and darkened lands of the earth, obsessing our private lives. The unmentionable odour of death offends the September night. Accurate scholarship can unearth a whole offence from Luther unto now that has driven a culture mad. Find what occurred at Linz, what huge
Let's stop it
imago
there,
made a
Teri, if we
psychopathic god.
I did want to hear his voice, but I also wanted to get to this. Actually, I wanted this last stanza, which I'll read my own self. Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. And then he concludes with this incredible last stanza. May I compose like them of eros and of dust. And catch this. Beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame. I just think that is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do look at a time like this to artists, musicians, poets, for solace, for perspective, for inspiration. But one of the things I like about that last line, other than its poetry, is the importance of affirmation. What do we affirm in difficult times?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that gets crucial. And so, I look around and I start close to home. We affirm love, family, friends. That's what we got. And it's beautiful. But then, you look politically and, I believe in solidarity. Solidarity is crucial. And then the things we're for kindness, we're for generosity, we're for justice, we're for equality, we're for freedom, we're for peace, we're for democracy, we're for Mother Nature, who's under siege right now. And so, as dark as it is, I just think by dealing with our emotions, and it is an emotional time, and sorry to bring my emotions to the table here, but it is what it is, that we need to first be gentle with each other and ourselves, be gentle with our loved ones, recognize where we're at, and we'll go forward. We'll get through this. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be especially hard on people who are not white, on people who are trans, on people who are undocumented, and Lord knows, how far the fascists are going to go. But the other thing to remember is fascists never survive in power very long. It's a fact. Fascism, I also think we should recognize that capitalism is devouring our democracy. And fascism is an effect of a product. And why? It lets fascism happen because capitalism doesn't deliver the goods. It no longer delivers the goods to the majority of the people in this country. They are suffering. That's what we saw on Election Day. People suffering economically and wanting a change so that their material conditions are better. And capitalism won't provide it. And the oligarchs aren't going to provide it either. And so that's one reason capitalism devours democracy. The other is the rich buy the political system. Here we have Elon Musk throwing ungodly amounts of money at it. We've seen it here in Wisconsin with the richest people in Wisconsin and the Elons and the folks down in Beloit, Diana Hendricks throwing so much money, polluting. They can buy our politicians. They try to buy our laws. So we see that happening. And so we are seeing fascism come out of capitalism and the crisis of capitalism. That at the macro level is where we're at. And so we need to, talk about a better system here, a fairer system than what we got than this. And this isn't advanced industrial I mean, it is advanced, but it is also cowboy capitalism too at the same time. And so, that's what we're dealing with. And those are big forces. Kamala Harris couldn't, even if she had no unforced errors, may not have been able to deal with these factors. And so we got to address them. Bernie addresses them. AOC addresses them. Francesca Hong addresses them. Angela Lang addresses them. But, we all got to do that. Francesca Hong, I want you to talk about a happier thing, and that is we gained some ground in the state legislature. Tell us how that happened and what that means.
We've got 45 Democrats elected to the state assembly, and we picked up 4 seats in the state Senate, which was all of the targeted races. And I think that this means locally, especially, people are beginning to gain trust in their representatives, and that they want deliverables. And Democrats, our assembly candidates, talked about that. We talked about how it's at the state legislature where there's a $4 billion surplus, and we can invest back in our communities to make sure cities and townships have what they need to provide the services that Wisconsinites deserve. We talk about protecting abortion rights and reproductive freedom and how we can put that into our state constitution. We talked about investing in public schools and making sure we're bringing 90% back to special education. I mean, these are things that matter to Wisconsinites that we said we can do in the state legislature when we have the majority. And folks are excited about that because we're saying we're fighting for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. And the people of Wisconsin are for public schools. They demonstrated that overwhelmingly, passing the vast majority of the referendums that were put before them, even though it meant that their taxes were going to go up a little bit.
And I think what's important for Democrats to realize here is that we're able to name the villain and talk about a deliverable when we talk about public schools. It was Republicans who have been defunding public education for the last 13 years, both at K-12 and for our universities. We are feeling the consequences of that. It is destroying communities and impacting our kids. And so folks across the country and in Wisconsin too are fighting back. I will always say it's public schools, regardless of where your children are going to school. Public schools make for stronger communities, and people want that.
No doubt about it. To what extent were the Fair Maps and the Fair Maps movement at play here in the gains that the Democrats made?
Oh, absolutely. The new maps played a huge role in making sure that we were able to compete in competitive seats, that we had Democrats both in safe districts and more competitive districts actually campaigning and competing with Republicans who had to go back to the communities and say they were going to do something about what was going on, the struggles that folks are feeling. And so Fair Maps took us out of this, complacency where representatives, Democrat or Republican, have to actually answer to their communities. And so we saw a completely different campaign landscape when you have folks who actually have to listen to the people.
And will this make a difference in the Capitol? Because I know when I was there, when they had the vast majority of power there, they were so arrogant. The Republicans were so disdainful, so dismissive of Democrats, even their colleagues on committees with them. They just kind of laughed everybody off. Do you think it's going to change the culture in there?
Absolutely. I think that we will not be forced into taking having to pick between two evils, what's worse for our communities and what's going to be worser. Instead, there will be opportunities for compromise. Because Republicans are going to have to go back to their communities with some tangible good in order to be able to campaign again. And so the elimination of complacency is what I'm looking forward to, and actually talking about policies that are going to improve lives and building back that trust that government is a force of good and can be used for good. And that's what we need to get all Wisconsinites back to so we can have a democracy that works for everyone.
I just want to give a shout out, one, for anyone that's listening that may not know. Rep Hong is a dear friend of mine, and it's people like her and her leadership to be able to crisscross the state in this election season and have those conversations. Like, she's just not knocking doors for herself. In fact, I almost forgot she was on the ballot herself, because she's, helping other Democrats across the state get elected as well. And I think that that should be an example of how we continue to show up in this moment, by listening to each other, by talking to folks, by maybe even going to places that you don't live, and engaging and understanding that we're far more alike than we are um, divided. And I think I just wanted to name that it's through people like Rep Hong and others that are adamant about kind of not always playing this traditional game of politics of how we get elected, but actually bringing humanity back to politics. I think a lot of us got in this work because we want to make a change for folks, because we love the humanity in others. But sometimes we lose that along the way. And I think Rep Hong is a reminder of how we continue to bring people together, but also to build that bridge. And it feels so distant, especially right now. But I think, again, that's an example of how we need to continue to show up moving forward.
And congratulations, Rep, on your reelection, too. It does seem to just we take it for granted, and we shouldn't take it for granted. So congratulations.
I'll say that I was very excited to see so many colleagues of mine who are in safe Democratic seats knock thousands of doors. Some who still had more competitive races knock hundreds of doors for folks who were in the most competitive races. And to see this collective, this shift to collaboration and making sure that we are lifting everyone up, because the Democrats have to be the party that's for all people. We exemplified that with how we campaigned this past cycle.
Well, Francesca Hong, thanks for being on the show with us. It's been great having you and having your perspective. You're listening to the Maggie Daun Show. I'm Matt Rothschild, guest hosting with Angela Lang of Block, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
Hey, Matt Rothschild with you for this last segment of the Maggie Daun Show this afternoon on the Civic Media Radio Network. If you want to get some last second thoughts out there on the air, give us a holler at 855-752-4842. I'm joined by Angela Lang, who's been kind enough to co-host with me today, and I always enjoy it when she does. Angela Lang is the executive director of Block, Black Leaders Organizing for Communities. Wow, what a show, Angela.
Yeah. I just want to say, as always, I'm always grateful anytime you ask me to co-host with you, but especially today, I didn't know how it would go, but I knew it was one of those things that personally, just sharing space and being able to be real and talk about our feelings and reflect as full people, I think is important. So thanks for that. And like I said, and I will always keep saying, as long as my schedule allows, when you send that email, I'm there. I really enjoyed these conversations with you.
Well, you're quite welcome. And it's so comforting to have you here and your presence. You know, every time I co-host with you, my friends and family members say, that Angela Lang, she's terrific. So that's reassuring. Yeah, I'm not sure what the best way to kind of come to a close today, other than just to try to tell people again, just to be easy on yourselves, those of us who've thrown ourselves into this effort, and the listeners here at Civic Media. My hat's off to Civic Media, too. Yeah. I do think Civic Media is playing a crucial role in trying to respond with civil dialogue, even with people who disagree with us all across the state. Also to counter the barrage of right-wing propaganda that people have been getting on the radio airwaves here in this state for years and years, right-wing radio that brought us Scott Walker and helped bring us Donald Trump, frankly. I mean, that right-wing media infrastructure was no accident. This was the brainchild of the billionaire right-wing Koch brothers and others like them, and right-wing foundations like the Bradley Foundation. They set up the institutions. They got the guests on the airwaves. They bought the airwaves. And it's just been, look at Rupert Murdoch at Fox. I mean, these folks knew what they were doing. And it wasn't something that happened this election cycle. It wasn't something that happened this year, last year. It's been a 5 or 6 decade clever plan by the far right on how to gain power.
Yep.
And they're popping the champagne bottles today because their plan worked. And for too long, folks with means on the left, including folks in Hollywood and folks in industry, or folks who made it the old-fashioned way by inheriting it, they did not invest in a progressive media structure. And we're paying the price for it right now. We're paying the price for it, and civic media, God bless civic media, they're trying to counter it. And they're trying to counter it in an organic way here locally, unlike what happened with Air America. Air America tried a national thing and just have national folks and not be connected to community. We're connected to community here. We're trying to connect to community here on civic media with stations all across the state and with local hosts for much of the day. And I just think it's gratifying. I know whenever I'm in my car, I'm listening to civic media. And it's so refreshing because you could drive around Wisconsin, as I did when I was executive director of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, and just, I'm trying to stay awake because I'm driving home and it's late, and I'm just scanning. I'm just scanning as a way to stay awake, and it's just right-wing radio, right-wing religious radio, sports talk, or top 40 or oldies. And that's all there was. And there was no way to find intelligent political conversation on your dial. I mean, there is NPR in Wisconsin Public Radio. Sometimes it's valuable. Sometimes I find it less than valuable. But there was no place for this local political dialogue to go on. And one thing we've learned it from Kathy Kramer about the politics of resentment. People want to talk. People want to be listened to. People want to be respected. People want to be heard. And they don't want to be dismissed as trash, as Joe Biden called them so foolishly at the end. And Kamala Harris must have just gasped when she heard that because it was so counter to the messaging that she was trying to bring forward. But we do need to engage with our fellow citizens who aren't dangerous right-wingers, but voted for Trump because they think the economy may be better under Trump. I mean, I think we've got to reconcile ourselves to that at some point.
I think we have one. Do we still have one more call that we can take?
Sure.
Well, there was one.
We did have a caller. The caller hung up. Let me see who.
Got it. Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I just want to thank the callers who have called. I want to thank Angela Lang, of course. I want to thank Brett.
We have one on the line right now. Yeah, 30 seconds.
Sam Liebert, let's take this call.
Yeah, hi, Matt and company. This is Angela. Great show. I did want to counter, and I'll just throw this out. I disagree that there weren't remarks made that pertain to people in lower income and middle class. For working families, when the proposal was to have a $6,000 tax credit for birth of a child, $25,000 tax credit to help you buy a house, $50,000 to help you start a new business. I've never heard of that before. And, I come from low income and now middle income. I would have loved to have had something like that. And I feel that when Representative Hong said that the Dems didn't do a lot on the subject of mental health, Tammy has led the way on mental health, particularly with suicide lines and with help for farmers who are having problems with mental health, depression, etc. I just think that my personal opinion is that part of the reason, the biggest reason why Kamala Harris had problems was because this is still an incredibly sexist country. And I don't know, I think I'm going to have to be 120 before we're going to see a woman president. That's my two thoughts.
I hear you, Joe. It was a big part, remains a big part, and that glass ceiling seems reinforced by steel bars right now, unfortunately. Thanks for listening to the Maggie Daun Show. I'm Matt Rothschild saying goodbye, thanking Cardi in the booth, and stay tuned for the Dom Salvia Show, and have a nice weekend. Take care of yourselves.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.